welcome. So right now we're currently in the circumcision of the Israelites when all the Amorite kings across Jordan to the west and the Canaanite kings near the sea heard how the Lord had dried up the water of the Jordan before the Israelites until they had crossed over. They lost heart and their courage failed because of the Israelites. At the time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelite men again." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the the Israel and circumcised the Israel and circumcised the Israelite men at Gibeth Haruth. This is the reason Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Egypt, who were males, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness along the way. That after they had come out of Egypt, though all the people who come out were circumcised, none of the people born in the wilderness along the way were circumcised after they had come out of Egypt. For the Israelites wandered in the wilderness 40 years until all the nations men of war who come out of Egypt had died off. 45 years of what for the Israelites wandered in the wilderness 40 years until all the nations men of war who came out of Egypt had died off because they did not obey the Lord. Had because they did not. All the Israelites wandered to the wilderness of years until the nation's men of war came out of Egypt had died off because they did not obey the Lord. For the Lord vowed never to let them see the land he had sworn to their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So this is pretty cool. To give us a land flowing with milk and honey. He raised up their sons in their place. It was these Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised since they had not been circumcised along the way. After the entire nation had been circumcised, they stayed there. They stayed where they were in the camp until they recovered. The Lord then said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the disgrace of the Egypt from you. Therefore, the place is still called Gilgad today, food from the land." While the Israelites camped in Gilgad on the plains of Jericho, they observed the Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the month. They had Passover. The day after Passover, they ate unleavened bread and roasted grain from the produce of the land. And the day after, they ate from the produce of the land. The manna ceased. Since there was no more manna, the Israelites they ate from the crops of the land of Canaan that year. The commander of the Lord's army, then Joshua, was near Jericho. He looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua approached him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" Wow. "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied. "Whoa! I have now come as commander of Lord's army." Then Joshua bowed with his face to the ground in worship and asked him, "What does my Lord want to say to his servant? What does my Lord want to say to his servants?" The commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Remove the sandals from your feet, or place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did that. The conquest of Jericho. Now Jericho was strongly fortified because of the Israelites, no one leaving or entering. The Lord said to Joshua, "Look, I have handed Jericho, its king, and its best soldiers over to you. March around the city with all the men of war, circling the city one time. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry 7 rams horns, trumpets in front of the ark. But on the seventh day, march around the city 7 times, while the priests blow the trumpets. When there was a prolonged blast of the horn, and you hear its sound, all the troops, have all the troops give a mighty shout. Then the city wall will collapse. The troops will advance, each man straight ahead. So Joshua son of Nun summoned the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant and have 7 priests carry 7 trumpets in front of the ark of the Lord. He said to the troops, move forward, march around the city, and have the armed men go ahead of the ark of the Lord. After Joshua had spoken to the troops, 7 priests carrying 7 trumpets before the Lord moved forward and blew the trumpets. The ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. While the trumpets were blowing, the armed men went in front of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard went behind the ark. But Joshua had commanded the troops, do not shout or let your voice be heard. Do not shout or let your voice be heard. Don't let one word come out of your mouth until the time I say, shout, then you are to shout. So the ark of the Lord was carried around the city, circling it once. They returned to the camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning. The priests took the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests carrying 7 trumpets marched in the front of the ark of the Lord while the trumpets were blowing, and armed men went in front of them, and the rear guard went behind the ark of the Lord. On the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. Early on the seventh day, they started at dawn and marched around the city 7 times in the same way. That was the only day they marched around the city 7 times. After the 7th time, the priests blew the trumpet, and Joshua said to the troops, shout. And Joshua said to the troops, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. But the city and everything in it are set apart to the Lord for destruction. Holy crap. For the Lord has given you the city, but the city and everything in it are set apart to the Lord in the destruction. Only Wrath, the apostate, and everyone with her in the house we live, because she hid the messengers we sent. But keep yourself from the things set apart, or you will be set apart for destruction. If you take any of those things, you will set apart the camp of Israel for destruction and make trouble for it. For all the silver and gold, and all the articles of bronze and iron are dedicated to the Lord and must go into the Lord's treasury. So the troops shouted, and the trumpets sounded. When they heard the blast of the trumpet, the troops gave a great shout, and the wall collapsed. The troops advanced into the city, each man straight ahead, and they captured the city. They completely destroyed everything in the city with the sword, every man and woman, both young and old, and every ox, sheep, and donkey. Rahab and her family spared. Joshua said to the two men who Joshua said to the two men. Joshua said to the two Joshua said to the two men. Joshua said to the two men who had scouted the land, go. Wait, don't do. It's you. What the hell? Okay. One moment. All right, guys. We need to keep reading. Um. Yeah, for sure. Let's see.
And grateful. Your time.
For sure. Let's see.
And grateful. Your time. Do today. Let's not just talk about what it means to be a good person. Just be one. Think about the vastness of time and everything that exists. In the grand scheme, each nature, you're in sync. You tell the universe what give or take as you please. And it's not about being arrogant. It's about being in harmony and grateful. Your time here is limited. Live large as if you're on top of a mountain. Because honestly, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. What matters is living as a part of a bigger community. Show the world an authentic person who truly lives in harmony with nature.
Okay, that is the goal. All right, we're gonna read the Bible. We're gonna read the Bible. Joshua said to two men who had scouted the land, "Go to the prostitute's house and bring the woman out of there, and all who are with her, just as you swore to her." So the young men who had scouted went in and brought out Rahat and her father, mother, and brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought out her whole family and settled them outside the camp of Israel. They burnt the city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasure of the Lord's house. However, Joshua spared Rahab and the her father her father's family, and all who belonged to her, because she hid the messages Joshua had sent to spy on Jericho, and she still lives in Israel today. At the time Joshua imposed this curse, the man who undertakes the rebuilding of the city Jericho and is cursed before the Lord. He will lay its foundation at the cost of his firstborn. He will finish its gates at the cost of his youngest. And the Lord and the Lord was Joshua. And the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. Defeat at Ai. Ai. Interesting. Defeat at Ai. The Israelites, however, were unfaithful regarding the defeat at Ai. The Israelites, however, were unfaithful regarding the things set apart at destruction. Achon, son of Carmi, son of Sabdi, son of Seram, and the tribe of Judah took some of what was set apart, took what was set apart of the tribe of Judah, took some of what was set apart. The Lord's anger burned against the Israelites. Joshua sent men from Jericho at Ai, which is near Bethel and east of Bethel, and told them, "Go up and scout the land." So the men went up and scouted the land. After returning to Joshua, they reported to him, "Don't send all the people, but send about 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai." Interesting. Since the people of Ai are so few, don't wear out all our people there. So about 3,000 men went up there, but they fled from the men of Ai. The men of Ai struck down about 36 of them and chased them from outside the city gate in the quarries, striking them down on the descent. As a result, the people lost heart. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord until evening. He did as did the elders of Israel. They all put dust on their heads. "Oh Lord God," Joshua said, "why did you ever bring these people across the Jordan to hand us over to the Amorites and our destruction? If only we had been content to remain on the other side of the Jordan. What can I say, Lord, now that Israel has turned its back and run from its enemies? When the Canaanites and all who live in the land hear about this, They will summon us and wipe out our names from the earth. Then what will you do about your great name? The Lord then said to Joshua, stand up. Why have you fallen face down, Israel? What Israel has sinned. They have violated my Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant. My my covenant that I appointed for them. They have they have taken some of what was sent apart. They have stolen, deceived, and put those things of their own belongings. This is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They will turn their backs and run from their enemies, because they have been set apart for destruction. I will no longer be with you unless you remove from among you what is set apart. Go and consecrate the people. Tell them to consecrate themselves for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There are things that are set apart. There are things that are set apart among you. Israel, you will not be able to stand against your enemies until you remove what is set apart. In the morning, present yourself tribe by tribe. The tribe of the Lord selects is to come forward, clan by clan. The clan of the Lord selects is to come forward, family by family. The family the Lord selects is to come forward, man by man. The one who is caught with the thing set apart must be burned, along with everything he has, because he has violated the Lord's covenant and committed an outrage in Israel. A Chan judged. Joshua got up early in the morning. Joshua got up early in the morning. He had Israel come forward, tribe by tribe, and the tribe of Joshua was selected. He had the clans of Judah come forward, and the Zerahite clan was selected. He had the Zerahite clan come forward by heads of families. The Zabdi was selected. He then had Zabdi's family come forward, man by man, and Achan, son of Kami, son of Jabdi, son of Serai, the tribe of Judah, was selected. So Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and make a confession to him. I urge you, tell me what you have done. I don't hide anything from me. Achan replied to Joshua, it is true, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I did. What I saw among the spoils of the beautiful cloak from Babylon, the 5 pounds of silver and the bar of gold weighing a pound and a quarter. I coveted them and took them. You can see for yourself. They are concealed in the ground inside my tent, with the silver under the cloak. So Joshua sent the messengers who ran to the tent, and there was the cloak concealed in the tent with the silver underneath. They took the things from inside the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites, and spread them. And they took the things from inside the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites, and spread them out in the Lord's presence. Then Joshua and all Israel with him, and then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver and the cloak and the bar of gold, his sons and daughters, and his oxen, donkeys, shepherd, and tent, and all he had. He brought them up in the valley of Achor. Joshua said, why have you brought us trouble? Today the Lord will bring you trouble. So all Israel stoned them to death. They burned their bodies, threw stones on them, and raised over him a large pile of rocks, and remains until today. The Lord turned from his burning anger. Therefore, that place is called the Valley of Angkor still today. Conquest of Ai. Conquest of Ai. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid or discouraged. Take all the troops with you and go back. And take all the troops with you and go attack Ai. Look, I have handed over to you the king of Ai, his people, city, land. Treat Ai and its king as you did Jericho and its king. Expect that you may plunder its spoil and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city. So Joshua and all the troops set out to attack Ai. Joshua selected 30,000 of his best soldiers and sent them out of night. He commanded them, "Pay attention, lie in ambush behind the city, not too far from it, and all you be ready. Then I and all the people who are with me will approach the city. When they came out against us, as they did in the first time, we will flee from them. They will come after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will stay. They are fleeing from us as before. While we are fleeing from them, you are to come out of your ambush and seize the city. The Lord your God will hand it over to you. After taking the city, set it on fire. Follow the Lord's command. See that you do as I have ordered you." So Joshua sent them out, and they went to the ambush site and waited before Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai. But he spent that night with the troops. Joshua started early in the morning and mobilized them. Then he and the soldiers and the elders of Israel and the troops up. Then he and the elders and the Israel led and troops led the troops up to Ai. All those who were with him went up and approached the city, arriving opposite of Ai. They camped to the north of it, with the valley between them and the city. Now Joshua had taken about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai to the west of the city. The troops were stationed in his way, the main camp of the north of the city and its rear guard to the west of the city. And the night Joshua went into the valley. When the king of Ai saw the Israelites, the men of the city hurried and went out early in the morning so that he and all his people could engage Israel in battle at a suitable place facing the Arabah. But he did not know there was an ambush waiting for him behind the city. Joshua and all the Israel pretended to be beaten back by them and fled towards the wilderness. All the troops of Ai were summoned to pursue them, and they pursued Joshua and were drawn away from the city. Not a man was left in Ai or Bethel who did not go out after Israel, leaving the city exposed while they pursued Israel. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Hold out the javelin in your hand towards Ai, for I will hand the city over to you." So Joshua held out his javelin towards it. Then he held out his hand. The men in ambush rose quickly from the position. They ran, entered the city, captured it, and immediately set it on fire. Whoa. The men of Ai turned and looked back. The smoke from the city was rising to the sky. They could not escape in any direction, and the troops had fled in the wilderness, now became the pursuers. When Joshua and all Israel saw that the men in ambush had captured the city and the smoke was rising from it, they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. Then men in ambush came out of the city against them, and the men of Ai were trapped between the Israelites' forcers. Some of the They struck them down until no survivor or fugitive remained. They captured the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. When Israel had finished unaliving everyone living in Ai who had pursued them into the open country, when every last one of them had fallen by the sword, all Israel returned to Ai and struck it down with the sword. The total of those who fell that day, both men and women, was 12,000. All the people of Ai. Whoa. Joshua did not drop back his hand that was holding the javelin until all the inhabitants of Ai were completely destroyed. Israel plundered only the cattle and spoil of the city for themselves according to the Lord's command he had given Joshua. Joshua burned Ai and left it a permanent ruin, still desolate today. He hung the body of the king of Ai on a tree until evening, and at sunset, Joshua commanded that he take his body down the tree. They threw it down at the entrance of the city gate and put a large pile of rocks over it, which still remains today. Wow. They threw it down the entrance of the city. What the? Put it on a tree until evening, and at sunset, Joshua commanded that they take his body down from the tree. They threw it down at the entrance at the city gate and put a large pile of rocks over it, which still remains today. Renewed commitment to the law. At the time, Joshua built an altar at Mount Ebal and to the Lord, the God of Israel, just as Moses, the Lord's servant, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar to uncut stones of which no iron tool has been used. When they offered burnt offerings to the Lord and sacrificed fellowship offerings on it, there on the stones, Joshua copied the law of Moses, which he had written in the presence of the Israelites, all Israel residents, alien and citizens alike, with their elders. Officers and judges stood on each side of the Ark of the Lord's Covenant, facing the Levitical priests who carried it. Half of them were in front of the Muzah, Mount Gerizim, and half in front of Mount Ebal. At Moses, the Lord's servant, had commanded earlier concerning blessings the people of Israel. Afterward, Joshua read aloud all the words of the law, the blessings as well as the curses, according to all that is written in the book. Wow. The blessings as well as the curses, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There is not a word of all that Moses had committed. That was not a word of all that. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read before the entire assembly of Israel, including the women, the dependents, and the resident aliens who lived among them. Deception by Gibeon. When all the kings heard about Jericho and Ai, those who were west of the Jordan in the hill city at the Judean foothills, that along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea towards Lebanon, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, they formed a unified alliance to fight against Joshua and Israel. When the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that what Joshua had done to Jericho, when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they acted deceptively. They gathered provisions and took worn out sacks on their donkeys and all. They wore old patched sandals on their feet and the red fur clothing of their bodies. Their their entire provisions of bread was dry and crumbly. They went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgad and said to him and all the men of Israel, "We have come from the distant land. Please make a treaty with us." The men of Israel replied to the Hebrides, "Perhaps you live among us. How can we make a treaty with you?" They said to Joshua, "We are your servants." And Joshua asked them, "Who are you and where do you come from?" They replied, "Your servants come from a faraway land because of the reputation of the Lord your God. For you have heard of his fame and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two Amorite kings beyond the Jordan, King Shion and Heshon, the king of Og and Bashan, and who was in Ashtaroth, who our elders and our inhabitants of our land told us, take provisions with you for the journey and go meet them and say, we are your servants. Please make a treaty with us. This bread of ours was worn when we took it in from our house and as food on the day we left it come to you. As but see, it is now dry and crumbly. These wineskins were new when we filled them, but see, they cracked, and these clothes and sandals of ours are worn, and from the extremely long journey. Then the men of Israel took some of our provisions, but did not seek the Lord's decision. Then the men of Israel took some of their provisions, but did not seek the Lord's decision. So Joshua established peace with them and made a treaty to let them live, and the leaders of the community swore an oath to them. Gibeon's deception discovered 3 days after making the treaty with them. They heard that the Gibeonites were their neighbors living among them. So the Israelites set out and reached the Gibeon cities on the third day. On the third day. Their cities were Gibeon, and okay, something, Beroth and Kiriath Gibeath, but the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the community had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. Then the whole community crumbled against the leaders. Then all the leaders answered them, we have sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we cannot touch them. Now we cannot. The leaders answered them, we have sworn an oath to them, to the Lord of the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them. This is how he will treat them. We will let them live so that no wrath will fall on us because of the oath we swore to them. They also said, let them live. So the Gibeonites became woodcutters, and the water carriers cut for the whole community as the leaders had promised them. Joshua summoned two Gibeonites and said to them, why did you deceive us by telling us you live far away from us, when in fact you live among us? Before you are cursed. You will always and will always be slaves, woodcutters, and water carriers. Water carriers. What? Woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God. The Gibeonites answered him, it was clearly communicated to your servants that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and destroy all the inhabitants of the land and destroy all the inhabitants of the land before you. We greatly feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. Now we are in your hands, but now we are in your hands. But to us, whether you think is right, this is what Joshua did to them. He rescued them from the Israelites, and they did not unalive them. On the day he made them woodcutters and water carriers. Whoa, woodcutters and water carriers. Interesting. Woodcutters and water carriers. Woodcutters and water carriers, as they are today, for the community and the as they are today for the community and for the Lord's altar at the place. For the community and for the Lord's altar at the place he would choose. The day the sun stood still. Now King Adoni Sedek in Sedek of Jerusalem. Now King Adok Sedek of Jerusalem heard that Joshua had captured Ai and completely destroyed it, treating Ai and its king as he had Jericho and its king. And the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were living among them. So Adonizedek and his people were greatly alarmed because Gibeon was a large city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and its men uh, were warriors. What? Gibeon was a large city like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and its men were warriors. Therefore, King Adoni Zadrek and Jerusalem sent word to King Hobam and Hebron, King Firam and Jamruth, King Japhai and Lachish, and King Debri and Eglon, saying, "Come up and help me. We will attack Gibeon because they have made peace with Joshua and the Israelites." So 5 Ammonite kings and the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. King of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon joined forces, advanced with all their armies besides Gibeon, and fought against it. Then the men of Gibeon sent word of Joshua in the camp at Gilgal. "Don't give up on your servants. Come quickly and save us, help us, for all the Ammonite kings living in the hill country have joined forces against us." So Joshua and all his troops, including all his best soldiers, came from Gilgad. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for I have handed them over to you. No, not one of them will be able to stand against you." So Joshua caught them by surprise. After marching all night from Gilgad, the Lord threw them into confusion before Israel. He defeated them in a great slaughter at Gibeon. Chased them through the ascent of Beth Horon and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makeda. As they fled before Israel, the Lord threw large hailstones on them from the sky along the descent of Beth Horon all the way to Azekah, and they did more of them in all the way to Azekah, and they died. More of them died from the hail than the Israelites unalived with the sword. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the presence of Israel's son. "Stand still over Gibeon, the moon in the valley of Aijalon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Isn't this written in the book of Jasher? The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed its setting almost a full day. Then there has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord listened to a man, because the Lord fought for Israel. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgad. Execution of the 5 kings. Now that the five defeated kings have fled and hid in the cave of Makeda, it was reported to Joshua, the five kings have been found that are hiding in the cave at Makeda. Joshua said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and station men to it to guard the kings. But as for the rest of you, don't stay there. Pursue your enemies and attack them from behind. Don't let them enter their cities, for the Lord your God has handed them over to you. So Joshua and the Israelites finished inflicting a terrible slaughter on them until they were destroyed. Until a few survivors ran away on the fortified city, the people returned safely to Joshua in the camp of Makeda, and no one dared to threaten the Israelites. Then Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those five kings to me out of there. That is what they did. They brought the five kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Labish, Eglon, and Joshua out of the cave. When they had brought the kings to him, Joshua summoned all the men of Israel. Joshua summoned all the men of Israel to the military commanders who had accompanied him. Come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings. So the commanders came forward and put their feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, don't be afraid or discouraged. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord will do this to all the enemies you fight. After this, Joshua struck them down and executed them. He hung their bodies on 5 trees, and they were there until evening. At sunset, Joshua commanded that they be taken down from the trees and thrown into the cave where they had hidden large stones and were placed against the mouth of the cave, and the stones are still there. Conquest of the southern cities. Conquest of the southern cities. On the day Joshua captured Makeda and struck it down with the sword, including its kings, he repeatedly destroyed it and everyone he won in it, leaving no survivors. So he treated the king of Makeda as he had the king of Jericho. Joshua and all of and all Israel with him crossed from Makeda and Libya and forth against Lebanon. The Lord also handed it to its king over to Israel. He struck it down, putting everyone in it to the sword, and left no survivors in it. He treated Lebanon's king as he had the king of Jericho from Jibnah. Joshua and all Israel with him crossed to Lachish. They laid siege to it and attacked it. The Lord The Lord handed Lachish over to Israel, and Joshua captured it on the second day. He struck it down, putting everyone in it in the sword, just as he had done to Lebanon. At the time, the king of Gezer went to help Lachish, but Joshua struck him down along with his people, leaving no survivors. Then Joshua crossed from Lachish to Eglon, and all of Israel with him. They no they set siege to it and attacked it. On the day they captured it and struck it down, putting everyone in it to the sword. He completely destroyed it. And that day, just as he had done to Lachish. Next, Joshua and all Israel with him went up to Eglon, Lebanon, and attacked it. They captured it and struck down its king and its vestiges, and everyone in it with a sword. He left no survivors, just down at Eglon. He completely destroyed Hebron and everyone in it. Finally, Joshua turned to Beer and attacked it, and all that Israel was with him. He captured its kings and its villages. They struck them down with the sword and completely destroyed everyone in it, leaving no survivors. He treated Debris and the king as he had treated Hebron, and he had treated Lebanon and its king. So Joshua conquered the whole region of the hill country, the Negev, and the slopes with all their kings, leaving no survivors. He completely destroyed every living being. As the Lord, the God of Israel, he commanded Joshua conquered everyone from Kadesh, but to Gaza. He Joshua conquered everyone from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza and all the land of Goshen as far as Gibeon. Joshua captured all these kings in their land of the one campaign. Because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel, then Joshua returned to all the Israels returned to all Israel to all the camp of Gilgad. At the time Joshua turned back, captured Hazor, and struck down its kings with the sword, because Hazor had completely been the leader of all these kingdoms. They struck down everyone in it with the sword and completely destroying them. He left no one alive. Then he burnt Hazor. Joshua captured all these kings and their cities. Uh, Joshua captured all these kings and their cities and struck them down with the sword. He completely destroyed them as Moses, the Lord's servants, had commanded. However, Israel did not burn any of the cities that stood under Moses except Hazor. With Joshua burned, the Israelites plundered all the spoils and cattle of these cities for themselves, but they struck down every person with a sword until they had annihilated them, leaving no one alive. But as the Lord had commanded his servant Moses, Moses commanded Joshua. That is what Joshua did, leaving nothing undone for of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Conquest of the northern cities. Yikes. Wow. Alright, guys, we're gonna stop